Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my continuation of my book reading of Shawshank Redemption. We have the license plate factory and a big industrial laundry that does all the prison wet wash, plus that of Kittery Receiving Hospital and the Elliott Sanatorium. There's also a big automotive garage where mechanic inmates fix prison state and vehicles, not to mention the private cars of the screws, the administration officers, and on more than one occasion those of the parole board. The east side is a thick stone wall full of tiny slit windows. Cell Block 5 is on the other side of that wall. The west side is administration and the infirmary. Shawshank has never been as overcrowded as most prisons, and back in 48, it was one filled to something like two-thirds capacity. But at any given time, there might be 80 to 120 cons on the yard, playing toss with a football or baseball, shooting craps, jawing at each other, making deals. On Sunday, the place was even more crowded. On Sunday, the place would have looked like a country holiday if there had been any women. It was on a Sunday that Andy first came to me. I had just finished talking to Elmore, a fellow who often came in handy to me, about a radio when Andy walked up. I knew who he was, of course. He had a reputation for being a snob and a cold fish, and people were saying he was marked for trouble already. One of the people saying so was Boggs Diamond, a bad man who had to have on your case. Andy had no cellmate, and I've heard that was just the way he wanted it, although the one-man cell in Block 5 were only a little bigger than coffins. But I don't have to listen to rumors about a man when I can judge him for myself. "Hello," he said. "I'm Andy Dufresne." He offered his hand, and I shook it. He wasn't a man to waste time being social. He got right to the point. "I understand that you're a man who knows how to get things." I agreed that I was able to locate certain items from time to time. "How do you do that?" Andy asked. "Sometimes," I said, "things just seem to come into my hand. I can't explain it, unless it's because I'm Irish." He smiled a little at that. "I wonder if you could get me a rock hammer." "What would that be? And why would you want it?" Andy looked surprised. "Do you make motivations a part of your business?" With words like those, I could understand how he gotten a reputation for being the snobby sort, the kind of guy who likes to put on airs. But I sensed a tiny thread of humor in his question. "Well, I'll tell you," I said. "If you want a toothbrush, I wouldn't ask questions. I just quote you a price. Because a toothbrush, you see, is a non-lethal sort of a weapon." "You have strong feelings about lethal weapons?" "I do." An old friction-shaped baseball flew towards us, and he turned cat-quick and picked it out of the air. It was a move Frank Mulzone would have been proud of. Andy flicked the ball back to where it had came from. Just a quick and easy-looking flick of the wrist, and that throw had some mustard on it, just the same. I could see a lot of people were watching us with one eye as they went about their business. Probably the guards at the tower were watching too. I won't gilt the lily. There are cons that swing weight in any prison, maybe 4 or 5 in the small one, maybe 2 or 3 dozens in the big one. At Shawshank, I was one of those with some weight. And when I thought of Andy Dufresne would have a lot to do with how his time went. He probably knew it too, but he wasn't sucking up to me, and I respected him for that. "Fair enough. I'll tell you what it is and why I want it. A rock hammer looks like a miniature pickaxe, about so long. He held his hand about a foot apart. And that was when I first noticed how neatly kept his nails were. It's got a small, sharp pick at one end and a flat, blunt hammer head on the other. I want it because I like rocks. Rocks, I said. Go down here a minute, he said. I humored him. We hunkered down on our haunches like Indians. Andy took a handful of exercise yard dirt and began to sift it between his neat hands. So it emerged in a fine cloud. Small pebbles were left over, one or two sparkly. The rest dull and plain. One of the dull ones was quartz, but it was only dull until you rubbed it clean. Then it had a nice milky glow. Andy did the cleaning and then tossed it to me. I caught it and named it. Quartz. Sure, he said. And look, mica, SHILL, tilted granite. Here's a piece of graded limestone from when they cut this place out the side of the hill. He tossed them away and dusted his hands. I'm a rockhound. At least, I was a rockhound in my old life. I'd like to be one again, on a limited scale. Sunday expeditions in the exercise yard, I asked, standing up. It was a silly idea, and yet, seeing that little piece of quartz had given my heart a funny tweak. I don't know exactly why, just an occasion with the outside world, I suppose. You didn't think of such things in terms of the yard. Quartz was something to pick out of a small, quick running stream. Better to have Sunday expeditions here than no Sunday expeditions at all, he said. But you could plant an item like that rock hammer in somebody's skull, I remarked. I have no enemies here, he said quickly. No? I smiled. Wait a while. If there's trouble, I can handle it without using a rock hammer. But maybe you want to try to escape, going under the walls, because if you do... He laughed politely. When I saw the rock hammer 3 weeks later, I understood why. You know, I said, if anyone sees you with it, they'll take it away. If they saw you with a spoon, they'd take it away. What are you going to do? Just sit down here in the yard and start banging away? Well, I believe I can do a lot better than that. I nodded. That part of it really wasn't my business anyway. A man engaged with services to get him something. Whether he can keep it or not after I get it is his business. How much would an item like that go for? I asked. I was beginning to enjoy this quiet, low-key style. When you spend 10 years in stir, as I had then, you can get awfully tired of the bellowers and the braggarts and the loudmouths. Yes, I think it would be fair to say I liked Andy from the start. $8 in any rockin' gem shop, he said. But I realize that in business like yours, you work on a cost-plus basis. Cost plus 10% is my going rate, but I have to go up some on a dangerous item. For something like the gadget you're talking about, it takes a little bit more goose grease to get the wheels turning. Let's say $10. Well, 10 it is. I looked at him, smiling a little bit. Have you got $10? I do, he said quietly. A long time after, I discovered that he had better than 500. He had brought it in with him. When they check you in at this hotel, one of the bellhops is obligated to bend you over and take a look up your works. But there are a lot of works, and not to put too fine a point on it, a man who is really determined can get a fairly large item quite a ways up them, far enough to be out of sight, unless the bellhop you happen to draw is in the mood to pull on a rubber glove and go prospecting. That's fine, I said. You ought to know what I expect if you get caught. with what I get you. "Well, I suppose I should," he said. And I could tell you by the slight change in his grey eyes that he knew exactly what I was going to say. It was a slight lightning, a gleam of his special ironic humor. "If you get caught, you'll say you found it. That's about the long and short of it. They'll put you in solitary for 3 or 4 weeks. Plus, of course, you'll lose your toy and you'll get a black mark on your record. If you give them my name, you and I will never do business again. Not for so much as a pair of shoelaces or a bag of burglar. And I'll send some fellows around to lump you up. I don't like violence, but you'll understand my position. I can't allow it to get around. I can't handle myself. That would surely finish me." "Yes, I suppose it would. I understand, and you don't need to worry." "I never worry," I said. "In a place like this, there is no percentage in it." He nodded and walked away. 3 days later, he walked up beside me in the exercise yard during the laundry morning break. He didn't speak or even look my way, but pressed a picture of the Hun, Alexander Hamilton, into my hand, as neatly as a good magician does a trick card. He was a man who adapted fast, and I got him his rock hammer. I had it myself for one night, and it was just as he described it. There was no tool for escape. It would have taken a man just about 600 years to tunnel under the walls using that rock hammer, I figured. But I still felt some misgivings. If you plant that rock hammer end in a man's head, he would surely never listen to Fiber McGee or Molly on the radio again. And Andy had already begun having trouble with the sisters. I hoped it wasn't them he was wanting the rock hammer for. In the end, I trusted my judgment. Early the next morning, 20 minutes before the wake-up horn went off, I slipped the rock hammer and a package of camels to Ernie, the old trustee who swept the cell block 5 corridors until he was let free in 1956. He slipped it into his tunic without a word and didn't see the rock hammer again for 7 years. The following Sunday, Andy walked over to me in the exercise yard again. He was nothing to look at that day. I can tell you, his lower lip was swollen up so big it looked like a summer sausage. His right eye was swollen half shut, and there was an ugly washboard scrape across one cheek. And yes, he was having his troubles with the sisters, alright. But he never mentioned them. "Thanks for the tool," he said, and walked away. I watched him curiously. He walked a few steps, saw something in the dirt, bent over and picked it up. It was a small rock. Prison fatigue, except for those worn by mechanics when they're on a job, have no pockets. But there are ways to get around that. The little pebble disappeared up Andy's sleeve and didn't come down. I admired that, and I admired him. In spite of the troubles he was having, he was going on with his life. There are thousands who don't and won't or can't, and plenty of them aren't in prison either. And I noticed that although his face still looked as if a twister had happened to it, his hands were still neat and clean, his nails well kept. I didn't see much of him over the next 6 months, and he spent a lot of time in solitary. So a few words about the sisters. In a lot of pens they are known as bull queers or jailhouse sissies. Just lately the term in fashion is killer queens, but in Shawshank they were always the sisters. I don't know why, but other than the name, I guess there was no difference. It comes as no surprise to most these days that there's a lot of buggery going on inside the walls, except to some of the new fish, maybe, who have the misfortune to be young, slim, good-looking, and unwary. But homosexuality, like straight sex, comes in 100 different shapes and forms. There are men who can't stand to be without sex, or without sex of some kind and turn to other men to keep them from going crazy. Usually what follows is an argument between two fundamentally heterosexual men, although I've sometimes wondered if they are quite as heterosexual as they thought they were going to be when they get back to their wives or their girlfriends. There are also men who got turned in prison. In the current parlance, they go gay or come out of the closet. Mostly, but not always, they play the female and their favors are competed for fiercely. And then there are the sisters. They are to prison society what a rapist is to society outside the walls. They're usually long-timers doing hard bullets for brutal crimes. Their prey is the young, the weak, and the unexperienced. Or, in the case of Andy Dufresne, the weak-looking. Their hunting grounds are the showers, the cramped tunnel-like area way behind the industrial washers in the laundry, sometimes the infirmary. On more than one occasion, rape was occurred in the closest sized projection booth behind the auditorium. Most often what the sisters take by force, they could have had for free if they wanted. Those who have been turned always seem to have crushed on one sister or another, like teenage girls with their Sinatras, Presleys, or Redfords. But for the sisters, the joy has always been in taking it by force, and I guess it will always be. Because of his small size and fair good looks, and maybe also because that was very quality of self-possession I had admired, the sisters were after Andy from the day he walked in. If this was some kind of fairy story, I tell you that Andy fought a good fight until they left him alone. And I wish I could say that, but I can't. Prison is no fairy tale world. The first time for him was in the showers less than 3 days after he joined our happy Shawshank family. Just a lot of slap and tickle that time, I understand. They like to size you up before they make their real move, like jackals, finding out if their prey is as weak and hamstrung as it looks. Andy punched back and bled the lip of a big bulking sister named Boggs Diamond. Gone these many years since to who knows where. A guard broke it up before I could go any further, but Boggs promised to get him, and Boggs did. The second time was behind the washers in the laundry. A lot has gone on in that long, dusty and narrow space over the years. The guards know about it and just let it be. It's dim, littered with bags of washing and bleaching compounds, drums of X-Lite, catalyst, as harmless as salt if your hands are dry, murderous as battery acid if they're wet. The guards don't like to go back there. There's no room to maneuver, and one of the first things they teach them when they come to work in a place like this is to never let the cons get you in a place where you can back up. Boggs wasn't there that day, but Henry Backus, who had been washroom foreman down there since 1922, told me that 4 of his friends were. Andy held him at bay for a while with a scoop of X-Lite, threatening to throw it in their eyes if they came any closer. But he tripped trying to back around one of the big wax 4 pockets. That was all it took. They were on him. I guess the phrase gang rape is one that doesn't change much for one generation to the next. That's what they did to him, those 4 sisters. They bent him over a gearbox and one of them held a Phillips screwdriver to his temple while they gave him the business. It rips you up some, but not bad, am I speaking from personal experience, you ask? I only wish I weren't. You bleed for a while. If you don't want some clown asking you if you just started your period, you wad up a bunch of toilet paper and keep it down the back of your underwear until it stops. The bleeding really is like menstrual flow. It keeps up for 2, maybe 3 days. A slow trickle, then stops. No harm done, unless they've done something even more unnatural to you. No physical harm done, but rape is rape, and eventually you have to look at your face in the mirror again and decide what to make of yourself. Andy went through that alone, the way he went through everything alone in those days. He must have come to the conclusion that others before him had come to, namely that there are only 2 ways to deal with the sisters: fight them and get taken, or just get taken. He decided to fight. When Boggs and the 2 of his buddies came after him a week or so after the laundry incident, "I heard you broke in," Boggs said, according to Ernie, who was around at the time. Andy slugged it out with him. He broke the nose of a fellow named Rooster McBride, a heavy-gutted farmer who was in for beating his stepdaughter to death. Rooster died in there, I'm happy to add. They took him, all 3 of them. When it was done, Rooster and the other egg, it might have been Pete Vernus, but I'm not completely sure, forced Andy down to his knees. Boggs Diamond stepped in front of him. He had a pearled handled razor in those days with the words "Diamond Pearls" engraved on both sides of the grip. He opened it and said, "I'm going to open my fly now, Mr. Man, and you're going to swallow what I give you to swallow. And when you're done swallowing mine, you're gonna swallow Rooster's." I guess you done broke his nose, and I think he ought to have something to pay for. And he said, "Anything of yours that you stick in my mouth, you're going to lose it." Boggs looked at Andy like he was crazy, and he said, "No," he told Andy, talking to him slowly like Andy was a stupid kid. "You didn't understand what I said. You do anything like that and I'll put all 8 inches of the steel into your ear. You get it? I understand what you said, but I don't think you understand me. I'm going to bite whatever you stick into my mouth. You can put that razor in my brain, I guess, but you should know that a sudden serious brain injury causes the victim to simultaneously urinate, defecate, and bite down." He looked up at Boggs, smiling that little smile of his. Old Ernie said, as if the 3 of them had been discussing stocks and bonds with him instead of throwing it to him just as hard as they could. Just as if he was wearing one of these 3-piece banker suits instead of kneeling on a dirty broom closet floor with his pants around his ankles and blood trickling down the insides of his thighs. "In fact," he went on, "I understand that the bite reflex is sometimes so strong that the victim's jaw have to be pried open with a crowbar or a jackhandle." Boggs didn't put anything in Andy's mouth that night in late February of 1948, and neither did Rooster McBride. And so far as I know, no one else ever did either. What the 3 of them did was to beat Andy within an inch of his life, and all 4 of them ended up doing a jolt in solitary. Andy and Rooster McBride went by way of the infirmary. And how many times did that peculiar crew have at him? I don't know. I think Rooster lost his taste fairly early on. Being in noose splints for a month can do that to a fellow, and Boggs Diamonds left off that summer all at once. And with that, I'm going to end it here for my continuation of my book reading of Shawshank Redemption. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.